Maya Chen hadn't expected the furniture delivery guy to look like temptation wrapped in work clothes, but here she was, watching a man move her sectional sofa like it weighed nothing while her pulse did something entirely unprofessional. The afternoon light streaming through her Atlanta townhouse windows caught the sweat glistening on his dark skin as he navigated the massive piece around her marble coffee table with the kind of effortless grace that made her forget she was supposed to be directing, not admiring. "You make that look effortless," she said from the doorway, arms crossed beneath her tank top, not trusting herself to get closer. The words came out heavier than intended, weighted with comparisons she hadn't meant to voice. Darius paused. One powerful hand braced against the sofa's arm, the other gripping the base. His eyes found hers across the room, deep brown, intelligent, with something careful behind them. "It's all about knowing where to apply pressure," he said, voice low and steady. "Some things just need the right touch." Maya's breath caught. She wasn't thinking about furniture anymore. He was tall, probably 6'2", with shoulders that filled out his company t-shirt in ways that made her suddenly aware of how empty her house had felt since Marcus moved out 3 months ago. But it wasn't just his build that drew her attention. It was the quiet confidence in how he moved, the way he treated her expensive furniture with respect while making it look weightless. "Where do you want it?" he asked, straightening up and wiping his brow with the back of his hand. The question hung in the air between them, and Maya felt heat creep up her neck. "Against the wall," she managed, pointing toward the space beneath her floor-to-ceiling windows. "Facing the fireplace." He nodded and lifted again, muscles flexing as he guided the sectional into position with surgical precision. Maya found herself studying the way his jeans hugged his thighs, the careful control in every movement. Marcus had always complained about his back, hired people for everything, made her feel guilty for asking him to help with the simplest tasks. This man made moving furniture look like an art form. "Perfect?" Darius asked, stepping back to assess the placement. Maya moved closer, pretending to examine the angle while breathing in the scent of honest work and something else. Cedar, maybe aftershave. "It's perfect," she said softly, then looked up to find him watching her with an expression that made her stomach flutter. The space between them felt charged, dangerous, professional boundaries blurred by something neither of them was acknowledging. "Anything else need moving?" he asked, and Maya heard the double meaning whether he intended it or not. "Everything," she thought, "starting with the walls I've built around my heart. Can I offer you some coffee?" Maya heard herself ask, before she could think better of it. "You've been working hard and it's the least I can do." Darius hesitated, his hand still resting on the sofa's arm. The question hung between them like a bridge. Neither was sure they should cross. "That's kind of you," he said carefully, "but I should probably head to my next job." Maya felt the rejection like a small punch to her chest, though she tried to keep her expression neutral. "Of course, I didn't mean to keep you." She moved toward the kitchen anyway, needing the distance, needing something to do with her hands. "I just made a fresh pot, and I always make too much." The sound of his footsteps following her across the hardwood floors made her pulse quicken. When she glanced back, he was studying her kitchen with the same careful attention he'd given her furniture, taking in the granite countertops, the high-end appliances, the wine fridge that Marcus had insisted they needed but rarely used. "This is a beautiful home," Darius said, leaning against the doorframe but not quite entering the space. "Thank you." Maya pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, her movements more deliberate than necessary. "It's too big for just me, honestly. I'm still getting used to all the space." The admission slipped out before she could stop it, revealing more than she'd intended. Darius's expression shifted, something softer flickering in his dark eyes. "How long have you been on your own?" he asked gently. 3 months. Maya poured the coffee, grateful for the familiar ritual. Divorce was finalized in January. She handed him the mug. their fingers brushing briefly during the exchange. The contact sent electricity up her arm, and from the way his jaw tightened slightly, she suspected he felt it too. "I'm sorry," he said, wrapping both hands around the ceramic like it was an anchor. "That's never easy." Maya leaned against the counter, maintaining what felt like a safe distance while studying his face. There was genuine concern there, not the polite sympathy she'd grown tired of from friends and colleagues. "Are you married?" she asked, then immediately felt heat flood her cheeks. "I'm sorry, that's none of my business." "No, it's okay." A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I'm not. Haven't found the right person yet." The way he said it, the way his eyes held hers for just a beat too long, made Maya's stomach flutter dangerously. "Maya," she said suddenly, extending her hand. "I realized I never properly introduced myself." "Darius," he replied, his palm warm and calloused against hers. Neither of them let go immediately. Darius sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone like it might explode. The text had come in 20 minutes ago, and he'd read it at least a dozen times, each pass making his chest tighter with something that felt dangerously close to anticipation. "Hi, this is Maya from yesterday. I have a bedroom door that's stuck and won't open properly. Could you take a look when you have time? I can pay your regular rate." He set the phone on his nightstand and walked to the window of his apartment above the moving business. The Atlanta skyline glittered in the distance, but his mind wasn't on the view. It was on the way Maya's hand had lingered in his when they'd shaken goodbye, the careful way she'd watched him drink his coffee like she was memorizing the moment. A stuck door. Right. Darius had been in this business for 5 years, long enough to recognize when a client was reaching for reasons to make contact. The professional thing would be to refer her to a handyman, maybe text back with the number for a good contractor who specialized in minor repairs. But Maya Chen wasn't just any client. He could still smell the faint trace of her perfume that had clung to his shirt after their handshake, still feel the weight of her gaze when she'd admitted to being alone in that big house. There had been something raw in her voice when she'd mentioned the divorce, a vulnerability that made him want to fix more than just her furniture placement. His phone buzzed again. Another text. "Sorry if this is inappropriate. I know you're not. A handyman. I just didn't know who else to call." The honesty in those words hit him square in the chest. She was giving him an out, acknowledging the line they were both pretending didn't exist. A smart woman who knew exactly what she was asking for and brave enough to risk the rejection. Darius picked up his phone and typed quickly before he could second-guess himself. "I can take a look tomorrow evening, if that works." "Around 7? Her response came back almost immediately. "Perfect, thank you." He stared at the screen for a long moment, then added, "Maya." "Yes, for future reference, I don't mind house calls." The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before her final message came through. "Good to know." Darius set his phone aside and leaned back against his headboard, a slow smile spreading across his face. Tomorrow evening couldn't come fast enough. He'd fix her door, but something told him that wasn't really what either of them wanted repaired. The real question was whether he was ready to cross a line he'd never crossed before, and whether she was ready to let him. The door opened with barely any pressure at all. Darius tested the handle twice, swinging it back and forth with the casual ease of someone who'd spent years understanding how things worked and broke. "Hinge was just a little tight," he said, not turning around. "Probably needed oil more than anything else." Maya stood behind him in her bedroom doorway, arms wrapped around herself like armor. She'd changed from her work clothes into jeans and a soft cream sweater that made her skin look luminous in the lamplight. "I'm sorry I wasted your time," she said quietly. "I thought it was really stuck." Darius turned then, taking in the carefully Made bed, the empty dresser where someone else's belongings used to sit. The single pillow on what had clearly been a king-size bed built for two. Understanding flickered in his dark eyes. "You didn't waste my time," he said gently. The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Maya looked down at her hands, twisting her bare ring finger, a habit she hadn't been able to break. He used to get so frustrated when things didn't work right. The door, the garbage disposal, anything that required effort, he'd storm off, leave me to figure it out, or call someone. Darius stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the cedar scent of his aftershave mixed with honest work. That must have been lonely. The simple observation hit her like a physical blow. Not an accusation, not advice, just acknowledgement of something she'd been too proud to admit even to herself. "It was," she whispered, finally looking up to meet his gaze. "I got used to fixing things myself or just living with what was broken. You don't have to do that anymore." The promise in his words, the way he was looking at her like she was something precious that deserved careful handling, made her chest tight with want. Without thinking, she stepped forward, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to see his face properly. "Darius," she breathed, and he went very still. His hand came up slowly, fingertips barely grazing her cheek. "Maya." She rose on her toes, drawn by something stronger than logic, and for a moment their breath mingled in the space between almost and everything. His other hand settled on her waist, warm and steady. Then reality crashed back. Maya pulled away sharply, pressing her palms against his chest. "I'm sorry," she said, voice shaking. I'm not ready for this. For you." Darius stepped back immediately, hands raised in surrender. "It's okay," he said softly. "When you are ready, I'll still be here." The certainty in his voice followed her long after he left. Maya's phone buzzed against her glass desk just as she was reviewing the quarterly marketing reports. Marcus's name on the screen made her stomach clench with familiar dread, but she answered anyway. Old habits dying hard. "Maya." His voice was smooth, confident, the same tone he'd used to convince her to marry him 6 years ago. "I've been thinking about us, about what we threw away." She leaned back in her leather chair, watching downtown Atlanta traffic crawl past her 20th floor window. "Marcus, we've been through this. The divorce is final. Legal papers don't erase 8 years together." There was something different in his voice today, desperation wrapped in charm. "I made mistakes, baby, I know that, but we can fix this. We were good together." Maya closed her eyes, remembering how small he'd made her feel, how every suggestion became criticism, every independent thought became an argument. "We weren't good together. I was just good at disappearing." "Come on, Maya, don't be dramatic." The edge crept in, familiar and sharp. "I'm offering you a real chance here, a second chance at the life we built." "The life you built," she corrected, standing and pacing to the window. "I was just the accessory you dragged along." By the time she got home that evening, Maya felt wrung out, raw from an hour-long conversation that had gone in circles. Marcus promising change, Maya remembering all the reasons she'd left. She was fumbling with her keys when Darius's truck pulled into her driveway. He climbed out with a small toolbox, wearing jeans and a navy Henley that stretched across his chest, in ways that made her forget her exhaustion. "Hey," he said, that easy smile warming his face. "Thought I'd check on that door, make sure the oil did the trick." "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." The simple honesty in his voice made her chest tight. This was what she'd forgotten existed, a man who showed up because he wanted to, not because he expected something in return. They were walking toward the front door when another car pulled up. Maya's blood turned to ice as Marcus stepped out of his BMW, designer suit impeccable, expression thunderous as he took in Darius beside her. "Well," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the driveway like a blade, "this explains a lot." The way his eyes raked over Darius, the sneer in his tone, the calculation behind his manufactured surprise, Maya recognized the look. She'd seen it directed at servers, doormen, anyone Marcus deemed beneath his notice. "Maya," Marcus continued, walking closer, "I didn't realize you were having maintenance issues." The deliberate pause, the way he said maintenance like it tasted. Bitter made Maya's hands curl into fists. Beside her, Darius went very still. "Marcus, leave." Maya's voice cut through the evening air, sharper than she'd intended, but not nearly as sharp as she felt. Marcus ignored her, his pale eyes fixed on Darius with the kind of cold assessment Maya had seen him use on business rivals. "So this is what you call moving on, trading down for the hired help?" The words hit the air like a slap. Maya felt Darius tense beside her, his jaw tightening, but he didn't move, didn't rise to the obvious bait. "You need to go," Maya said again, stepping closer to Darius in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. Marcus laughed, the sound bitter and ugly. "Oh, Maya, you always were naive about people's motivations. You think this is about you?" He gestured dismissively toward Darius. "Men like him see women like you as meal tickets. A nice house, a corporate job, a lonely divorcee with money to burn. That's enough." Darius's voice was low, controlled, but there was steel underneath. He set his toolbox down slowly and straightened to his full height, shoulders broad enough to cast shadows. "Did I hit a nerve?" Marcus's smile turned predatory. "What's your angle here, friend? Moving furniture into something more profitable?" Maya watched something dangerous flicker in Darius's dark eyes, but when he spoke, his voice remained steady. "The only person here with an angle is you, and your time's up." Marcus took a step forward, close enough that Maya could smell his expensive cologne mixed with something sour, desperation maybe, or the kind of entitlement that curdled when challenged. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a whisper meant to intimidate. "I can make your little business disappear with a few phone calls, bad reviews, permit problems, insurance issues. Men like you are replaceable." "Marcus!" Maya's voice cracked like a whip. 6 years of swallowing his condescension, of watching him bulldoze everyone in his path, of pretending his cruelty was sophistication, all of it crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. "Get off my property now!" Something in her tone must have penetrated Marcus's ego, because he actually stepped back, blinking like he'd been struck. "Maya, think about what you're choosing here," he said, his voice shifting back to false reason. "Think about what you're throwing away for this." "I'm choosing myself," she said quietly, moving to stand beside Darius. "Something I should have done years ago." Marcus's face twisted with something ugly before smoothing back into his practiced charm. "You'll regret this, both of you." As his BMW pulled away, Maya realized her hands were shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline, with the strange, fierce joy of finally standing her ground. Maya knocked on Darius's door at 11:30, still wearing the jeans and sweater from earlier, but with her hair loose around her shoulders and uncertainty written across her face. When he opened the door, shirtless in grey sweatpants with concern creasing his brow, she felt her breath catch. "Maya, what's wrong?" "I couldn't sleep," she said simply. "Can I come up?" His apartment was smaller than her bedroom, but felt infinitely warmer, exposed brick walls, worn leather furniture, books stacked on every surface. She could smell coffee and something else, something that was purely him. "I keep thinking about what Marcus said," she began, then stopped, wrapping her arms around herself. "About your motivations, about what I'm choosing." Darius went very still. And I realized I don't care." The words tumbled out in a rush. "Even if every terrible thing he implied were true, even if you were just using me, I'd still rather be used by someone who treats me like I matter than loved by someone who makes me feel invisible." "Maya, But that's not what this is it? She stepped closer, close enough to see the way his chest rose and fell with careful breaths. You're not using me. No, he said quietly. I'm not. Then what are you doing? Darius reached up slowly, cupping her face in his hands like she was something precious. Falling for a woman who's too good for me but brave enough to let me try anyway. The honesty in his voice broke something open in her chest. Maya rose on her toes and kissed him, soft at first, then deeper when his arms came around her waist and pulled her against the solid warmth of his body. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she pressed her forehead against his. He's going to make trouble for you. For us. He meant every word of those threats. Let him try. Darius's voice was steady, sure. I've dealt with men like Marcus before. What I haven't dealt with is feeling like this about someone. Like what? Like I'd fight the whole damn world to keep you safe. Maya felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being chosen, protected, wanted, without conditions or reservations. Take me to bed, she whispered against his lips. This time, when he kissed her, there was nothing careful about it, nothing held back. His hands tangled in her hair, and she melted into him completely, finally ready to stop running from what she wanted. Behind them, Atlanta glittered through the windows, but neither of them was thinking about the world outside anymore. The first sign came during the Monday morning marketing meeting. Maya was presenting quarterly projections when her boss, Richard, interrupted with an expression she'd never seen before. Polite distance where warmth used to be. Maya, I need to see you after this, he said, his voice carefully neutral. The presentation continued, but Maya felt eyes on her, whispers behind cupped hands. When she finally sat across from Richard's mahogany desk an hour later, her palms were damp with sweat. I received an interesting call over the weekend, Richard began, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. Marcus Chen expressed some concerns about your recent personal decisions affecting your professional judgment. Maya's blood turned cold. What kind of concerns? Nothing specific. Just suggestions that you might be going through a difficult adjustment period, making choices that could reflect poorly on the firm. Richard's tone was apologetic, but firm. I'm not saying I agree, but perception matters in this business. By Wednesday, the invitations had stopped coming. The usual after-work drinks, the weekend dinner parties, the casual coffee meetings that had once filled her social calendar, all quietly evaporated. When she ran into her friend Sarah at a grocery store, the conversation was stilted, uncomfortable. I heard you're seeing someone new, Sarah said, examining a package of organic lettuce with unnecessary intensity. I am. Maya kept her voice steady. That's nice. Sarah's smile was brittle. Marcus mentioned he was concerned about you, said you seemed to be rebounding pretty hard. The careful phrasing, the way Sarah wouldn't quite meet her eyes, Maya recognized Marcus's handiwork. He was weaving doubt through their social circle like poison through veins, planting seeds of concern disguised as care. By Friday, Maya was eating lunch alone at her desk when her phone buzzed with a text from Darius. How was your day? She stared at the simple question, feeling the weight of the week settle on her shoulders. The sideways glances, the excluded conversations, the growing sense that she was being systematically erased from the life she'd built. Complicated, she texted back. Want to talk about it tonight? Maya looked around the office, at colleagues who used to seek her opinion now avoiding eye contact, at the promotion she'd been promised that suddenly seemed less certain. Marcus was making good on his threats, dismantling her professional world piece by piece. But when she thought about Darius, the way he'd held her 3 nights ago, the quiet strength in his voice when he'd promised to fight for her, the isolation didn't feel quite so crushing. Yes, she typed. I need to see you. Some things were worth fighting for, even when the cost kept climbing. Maya found Darius in his workshop behind the moving business, sanding down an antique dining table with the same focused intensity he brought to everything. Wood shavings curled at his feet, and late afternoon sunlight streamed through dusty windows, turning the air golden around him. You restore furniture too? She asked from the doorway. He looked up, that slow smile spreading across his face. Side business. People throw away beautiful things just because they need a little work. The parallel wasn't lost on her. Maya stepped closer, running her fingers along the table's smooth edge. It's gorgeous. Maya, I want you to meet someone. Darius set down his sandpaper as footsteps echoed from the front office. My sister's been wanting to meet the woman who's got me distracted from work. Keisha Jenkins was petite, where Darius was tall, with natural hair pulled into a colorful head wrap and eyes that missed nothing. She embraced Maya like they'd known each other for years. So you're the one, Keisha said, stepping back to study Maya's face. Darius has been floating around here like a lovesick teenager. Keisha, Darius warned, but his tone was fond. What? It's true. Last week he forgot to pick up a client because he was texting someone. She grinned at Maya. Never seen my baby brother like this. The easy warmth, the teasing affection, the way they included her without reservation. It was everything Maya's own social circle had suddenly stopped being. No careful calculations, no judgment hidden behind polite smiles. Later, at Maya's house, Keisha helped prepare dinner while Darius fixed a squeaky cabinet hinge. The kitchen filled with laughter as Keisha shared stories about Darius's childhood, his fierce protectiveness even as a kid, the way he'd taught himself carpentry to help their mother fix things around their apartment. He's always been like that, Keisha said, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. Sees something broken and can't rest until he fixes it. Maya glanced toward the living room where Darius was patiently working, and her chest tightened with something that felt dangerously close to love. What about you? Keisha asked softly. You seem like you've been carrying some heavy things. The gentle question opened something in Maya she'd kept locked away. She found herself talking about Marcus, about the divorce, about watching her carefully. Constructed life crumble around her choices. Sounds like you're finally building something real instead of something pretty, Keisha said when Maya finished. Real is messier, but it lasts. When Darius rejoined them, sliding an arm around Maya's waist, she leaned into his warmth and thought maybe Keisha was right. Maybe real was exactly what she'd been missing. The quarterly client dinner at Aria was supposed to be Maya's chance to rebuild professional bridges. She'd chosen her navy dress carefully, arrived early, smiled until her cheeks hurt while making small talk with clients who suddenly seemed to remember her existence. Everything was going smoothly until Marcus walked through the restaurant's glass doors. He moved through the crowd like he owned it, shaking hands with Maya's boss, kissing cheeks with clients who knew him from their marriage. Maya watched from across the room, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips as he worked his way toward her with predatory precision. Maya, darling, his voice carried just enough to turn heads when he reached her table. You look radiant. Single life agrees with you. Richard appeared at her elbow, his smile strained. Marcus, what a surprise. I didn't know you'd be joining us. Last-minute addition. I have some business interests that align with tonight's discussion. Marcus's eyes never left Maya's face. I hope you don't mind me crashing your little gathering. Maya felt trapped, pinned between her boss's expectant smile and Marcus's calculated charm. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, but walking out would only prove whatever point Marcus was trying to make. Of course not, she managed. The next hour was torture. Marcus positioned himself strategically, inserting himself into every conversation, subtly undermining Maya's contributions while playing the concerned ex-husband. When her phone buzzed with a text from Darius, "How's dinner going?" Marcus noticed. Immediately, expecting someone? He asked loudly enough for the table to hear. Just a friend, Maya replied, but Marcus was already standing. Actually, speak of the devil. His smile was razor-sharp as he gestured toward the restaurant entrance. Looks like your friend found you. Maya's blood turned to ice. Darius stood in the doorway, scanning the room, clearly out of place in his clean jeans and button-down among the sea of designer suits. He'd come because she'd texted earlier about feeling anxious, because he cared enough to check on her. Isn't that sweet? Marcus continued, his voice dripping false warmth. Maya's contractor coming to collect her. The words hit the air like a bomb. Conversation stopped. Every eye at the table turned to follow Marcus's gaze, then swiveled back to Maya with expressions ranging from confusion to judgment. Richard's face went carefully blank. Maya! She looked at Darius across the crowded restaurant, saw the moment he realized he'd walked into an ambush, saw him start to back toward the door. This was it. The choice Marcus had been orchestrating all along. Maya stood up slowly, her chair scraping against marble floors in the sudden silence. Maya walked across that restaurant with her head high, past the shocked faces and whispered conversations, straight to where Darius waited by the entrance. She took his hand without hesitation, felt his fingers close around hers like an anchor. Ready to go? She asked quietly. He nodded, and they walked out together into the cool Atlanta night. The call came Monday morning at 8:15. Richard's voice was carefully neutral as he explained that the firm was restructuring and her position was being eliminated. Effective immediately. They'd courier her personal items by the end of the week. Maya sat in her kitchen, still in her robe, staring at her phone long after the call ended. 6 years of building her career, of proving herself, of playing by rules that shifted whenever she got too comfortable, gone because she'd chosen love over appearances. The second wave hit by noon, text messages from friends, each one a small betrayal wrapped in concern. Heard about what happened. Maybe you should have been more discreet. Marcus is worried about you. Think you might be having some kind of breakdown. By evening, Maya felt hollowed out, scraped clean. She drove to Darius's apartment on autopilot, not trusting herself to speak when he opened the door. He took one look at her face and pulled her inside. They fired me, she said simply, collapsing onto his couch. And I think I lost most of my friends too. Darius sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth, but not crowding her pain. I'm sorry, this is my fault. No. Maya turned to face him, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. This is Marcus's fault, and mine for letting him have that much power over my life for so long. She leaned back against the cushions, feeling something strange and unexpected rising in her chest. Not grief, not panic, relief. You know what's funny? She continued, a laugh bubbling up from somewhere deep. I hated that job. I hated pretending to care about quarterly projections and client dinners and impressing people who never really saw me anyway. Darius studied her face, searching for cracks in her composure. What are you going to do? Maya looked around his small apartment, at the books stacked everywhere, the restored furniture he'd made beautiful again, the life he'd built with his own hands. I'm going to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be who everyone else wants me to be. She leaned over and kissed him, soft and sure. And I'm going to do it with you, if you'll have me. Maya, he whispered against her lips, I'll have you anywhere you come. 6 months later, Maya woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Darius humming in their kitchen. Their kitchen. The words still made her smile. The loft apartment above his expanded workshop wasn't fancy, but it was theirs, filled with furniture he'd restored and plants she'd somehow managed not to kill. She padded barefoot across hardwood floors, wearing one of his t-shirts and nothing else, finding him at the stove making breakfast. His business had tripled since word spread about his craftsmanship. Apparently there were plenty of people in Atlanta who appreciated a man who treated beautiful things with care. "Morning," she murmured, sliding her arms around his waist from behind, breathing in the familiar scent of cedar and coffee that had become home. "Good morning, boss lady." He turned in her arms, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Ready for the big meeting? Maya's consulting firm was still small, just her and 2 freelancers helping other women start businesses after major life changes. But it was growing. Today she was meeting with her biggest potential client yet, a woman leaving a 20-year marriage who wanted to open an art gallery. "Ready?" she said, then paused, actually terrified, but ready. Darius cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing over her cheekbones. "You've got this. You help people rebuild their lives because you rebuilt yours." The confidence in his voice still amazed her. Not the desperate reassurance Marcus used to offer, but steady belief in who she'd become. It was the difference between someone trying to convince you of your worth and someone who simply saw it as fact. Later that morning, Keisha knocked on their door with pastries from the bakery down the street and updates about her latest dating disasters. They sat around the small table by the window, laughing until Maya's sides hurt, and she marveled at how easy it was to breathe now. "You know," Keisha said, stealing another croissant, "I barely recognize the woman my brother brought home 6 months ago. That Maya looked like she was carrying the weight of the world." "This Maya learned to put it down," Darius said quietly, his hand finding Maya's across the table. Maya thought about the woman she'd been, always performing, always seeking approval from people who saw her as an extension of Marcus, rather than a person in her own right. That woman had been drowning in a life that looked perfect from the outside, but felt hollow within. The meeting went better than she'd hoped. Dr. Sarah Morrison, the potential client, reminded Maya of herself 6 months ago, brilliant, accomplished, but uncertain about starting over at 52 after her husband left her for a younger colleague. "I know it sounds crazy," Sarah had said, "leaving a medical practice to open an art gallery." "It sounds brave," Maya had replied. "The crazy thing would be staying in a life that no longer fits." That evening, after a successful meeting and dinner, with clients who treated her like a peer rather than an accessory, Maya and Darius sat on their small balcony watching the city lights flicker to life. She was curled against his side, his arm warm around her shoulders, a soft throw draped over. Both of them against the October chill. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The old life, the money, the status?" Maya considered the question seriously, thinking about the woman she'd been, polished, careful, always performing for an audience that never really saw her. "No," she said finally. "I miss who I thought I was supposed to be. But I love who I actually am." Darius pressed a kiss to the top of her head, his lips lingering in her hair. "I love who you are too." And in the quiet strength of that moment, surrounded by the life they'd built together from honesty and choice rather than expectation, Maya knew she'd finally found her way home.